Once upon a time, getting your music into the hands of libraries involved copying all of your tracks onto CDs or even cassettes, doing up some fancy artwork along with a press kit with a bio, stuffing all of those things into mailers, shipping them off through the post office in the hopes that someone would be kind enough to open your kit, give your cues a listen, and with any luck, let you know that they want more of what you're selling. Now, while the internet has certainly changed things in the production music world, the idea of preparing your music, putting your best foot forward, and sending those off to libraries is still very much a part of making an impression with any potential new publisher. Only now, the delivery medium has changed. So, what is the current best way to put your music out there for libraries to see and to interface with? Well, we're going to take a look at the three biggest players in the catalog management and playlist space, meaning SoundCloud versus Reelcrafter versus Disco. We're going to talk strengths, maybe some weaknesses, costs, and hopefully help you figure out which service may be right for you. Plus, we're going to take a listen to an Asian-inspired cue written by you, a member of the 52 Cues community, on this week's episode of the 52 Cues podcast. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Cues podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things production and library music, where we talk about industry topics and take a deep dive into the different aspects of being a production music composer. Plus, we feature a cue written by you, a member of the 52 Cues community, and this week we're going to be listening to Gazing Eastward, an Asian-inspired cue written by 52 Cues community member Michael Sinay, so you definitely want to stick around for that. But if you want to skip over today's topic and get right to the cue critique, then be sure to check out the timestamps in the description below. And before we get started, I have to give a special word of thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Cues who keep the podcast, the channel, and everything here going. We are 100% community supported, so if you like what I do here, don't thank me, thank them. And if you want to learn more about how you can help support 52 Cues and unlock extra perks like music production live streams, workshops, lesson discounts, live feedback sessions, and much more, then click the links in the descriptions or stick around because we're going to be talking more about all of that a little bit later in today's episode. So I thought it was really important to talk about catalog and playlist services and the three big ones that always seem to kind of come up. And they are SoundCloud, Reelcrafter, and Disco or disco.ac. And they each have their advantages, and I think they each have kind of some disadvantages or just some kind of things you have to get your brain around. But even before we get into that, we have to ask ourselves some questions to understand which service is right for you. Ask yourself these questions. First of all, what do you need the catalog to be able to do? Like, what's the purpose of this playlist manager? And do you want just a playlist? Are you just looking for somewhere to dump your cues that you can have access to, or maybe send links to potential clients, to libraries, or whatever? Are you looking to distribute your files to the libraries? Are you looking for a way to deliver files? This is, of course, assuming that libraries don't have their own, distribution channels, and most do. But are you looking for a way to send out files to clients? Are you looking for ways to send out, uncompressed audio files for collaboration? These are all things to consider. Also, are you looking to distribute your files to streaming platforms? Apple Music, Spotify, iTunes, well, I think Apple Music and iTunes are kind of the same thing, but you get my take here. Are you looking for a service that's going to not only create your playlist, but where you can actually create albums and publish those and get into Content ID systems? Are you needing your playlist service to have discoverability? Is there a social media aspect? to your playlist or what you're wanting that playlist to do. Are you looking for the full press kit experience with its own like dedicated page with videos, photos, and bio information, all of that? And are you looking to expand beyond just a playlist? Do you have aspirations of being your own library? These are all things to take into consideration before choosing which catalog or which playlist service you're going to go for. And for me, those are the things that I have to wrestle with. What am I looking to accomplish with this playlist? And so I'm going to break these down, and I'm going to start with the oldest, and that is going to be SoundCloud. So SoundCloud is the oldest service. It's been around since 2007, and full disclosure, I use SoundCloud. I have been using SoundCloud from the very, very beginning because I find it to just be dead simple. It's just easy. And it's relatively cheap. There is a free version, which will give you about 3 hours of uploads. You get HD storage, basic insights. But I am a member of the Pro Unlimited, which is $12 a month. And that gives you unlimited upload time. You could get paid for your plays. Admittedly, I haven't really dug much into any of this. But you get insights. You can replace your tracks, which is hugely important if you're making updates or whatever. You can pin favorite tracks. You can create all of these playlists, and you have access to SoundCloud's digital distribution network, which is called Repost, which is also its own other service, kind of like DistroKid. It's like Repost is like DistroKid in that you pay a yearly fee. You can publish as much as you want, but if you stop subscribing, then they pull those cues off of the network, and that's kind of what DistroKid does. But I am a member of Pro Unlimited way back before it was called ever Pro Unlimited. And I like it, like I said, because I use SoundCloud just for playlist management. I think eventually I'm going to get into the digital distribution services because I think it's a better deal than DistroKid. And it includes the content ID registration, which DistroKid adds to each submission. So if you want one of your cues to live up in the streaming services and register with Content ID, according to DistroKid, you have to pay a yearly fee per track that goes into that Content ID system, meaning it's being tracked through YouTube plays. You have to pay per track per year, and that's outrageous. That's crazy. Whereas with SoundCloud, because Repost is included, then that's a killer deal. So I'm thinking about switching over into SoundCloud, but SoundCloud is just playlist management. That's all it does. And I actually have my account here, and you can see this is my SoundCloud. Now, you can actually, if I go back over here, you can go to my SoundCloud and you see this, and that's kind of the public facing SoundCloud page. But if I go over to my internal page, you can see how I use playlists. And from anytime I'm delivering to clients, for internal playlists, I have playlists of albums that I'm creating for my own publishing and for my own distribution. I've got new cue. Anytime I have a potential client, then I will gang up some examples, put them in a playlist, send them the playlist. I also keep track of all of my cues, and I have unlimited playlists, and I put little album covers, and it kind of looks like albums. And I keep, clients into their own playlists, but not all of these get onto my public list. The only time I ever put anything from SoundCloud into the public space are things that have been published or things that have made air. Anytime something makes air, then I will, or if I maintain the publishing rights, then I will put them out there. And it's not, honestly, it's not a ton. Not that there's not a ton that hasn't gotten published, but I don't go in very often and like remember to make these things public, but they are all set to private. And so anytime, on SoundCloud, you see the little private icon here, that means that nobody other than me, or if I give them a specialty link. So anytime I post a cue, I put it up into SoundCloud just so I can reference it, go back and listen to it later. Now, SoundCloud is great for playlist management. I think it's one of the best in the business, personally. Well, maybe I'm a little biased because that's what I do the vast majority of my playlist management. But what it doesn't do any file distribution as far as here you can go download this file if I'm collaborating with someone or something. There's none of that. I can't track, if somebody's viewed it. I can't put, I can create a playlist for, or I can create an individual playlist for a client. But once, they go to that playlist, then that's all there is. There's some artwork, but there's nothing more to it. It's definitely just a playlist manager. And SoundCloud kind of tries to push all the social aspect to it that I have never used. Yeah, I've never used, if you go to, if I go to my homepage, let's see if I go to, or just go to SoundCloud homepage, and they have all of these things. I have, to be honest, I have zero interest in any of this. I have zero interest in trying to get my tracks discovered, but that's just me. That's just me. I know that there is a pretty big hip hop scene in SoundCloud and an EDM scene as well. So I've heard of artists really kind of breaking a little bit by publishing their things onto SoundCloud. Now, all that having been said, my path to production music came through a publisher hearing my music up on SoundCloud because I was posting my things up there. They liked it, and we've talked about my journey before. So I use SoundCloud. It's relatively inexpensive, and I have no qualms with it because all I'm doing is sharing playlists. The SoundCloud player is very, very embeddable, and it's just easy. It's just easy. But I recognize that for some folks, they're wanting things a little bit more. SoundCloud isn't the most, if we're being honest, it's not necessarily the slickest, most professional kind of looking thing. I'm very, very used to it, but if you're wanting that slick kind of press kit experience, then I would recommend Reelcrafter. Reelcrafter at reelcrafter.com. This was created by Sam Hulick, who is a composer himself. And he created Reelcrafter as a way to make that online press kit experience where, each playlist that he calls reels, they're called reels there, they have their own page. They're all customizable. You can track when reels are opened. And there's an example here. You can theme that reel to with its own artwork, its own color palette, and all of that. And it looks really, really impressive. And you can create, my understanding, you can create a separate page for each one of your reels. Like I said, you can track when it's opened. You can embed video. So if you're a film composer and you want to put your video reel alongside your audio reels, then you can absolutely do that. I do like how the waveform in Reelcrafter seems a lot better than like if I were to play one of these tracks. This is back to SoundCloud. The SoundCloud waveform, that leaves kind of a lot to be desired. It's very very Web 2.0 kind of vibe to it, whereas Reelcrafter looks like a real waveform. And so I do like that. And I know that we have 52Qs members who use Reelcrafter. Michael Zinka, I know, who we featured on the podcast, sends Reelcrafter links. And so that is what Reelcrafter does. Now, the pricing, you have your starter. It's $8.5 a month if you build annually. Unlimited number of tracks, but you're limited to 10 reels or 10 playlists with 10 share links and only 3 embeddable playlists. Now you can track listener analytics, and which is great. You can have custom colors, artist logo, banners, and personalized URLs for the reels. And so where it's really kind of limiting you there is the number of reels and the number of links and the number of embeddable playlists that you can share out there. And that's where it's really kind of clamping down. And SoundCloud does that as well. The free service is not limited by the number of tracks, but by the number of hours. So the actual number, because SoundCloud does render the audio into MP3s. Now, I will say SoundCloud's MP3 algorithms have improved, but they're not great. They're not great. Now, what I don't know for sure, I don't necessarily know about any compression algorithm that Reelcrafter imposes, or if it's just the WAV file. If you know that, please let me know in the description below. And they do have a $21 per month, which is unlimited tracks, 80 gigabytes of video. So you're uploading the videos to their service, unlimited reels, unlimited links, unlimited playlist. And that's where really everything kind of unlocks. Advanced analytics. I mean, the SoundCloud analytics are pretty good, but Reelcrafter is going to be better than that. Custom colors, email notifications, personalized URLs, audio metadata editing, which is really, really nice. Multiple videos and images on Reels. You can password protect Reels, and you can have playlist links that expire. So if you are, like I said, if you are looking for that professional, slick, this is me presenting a digital press kit experience, if that's the experience you're wanting, then I think Reelcrafter is probably for you. Now, for me, as far as where I am in my journey and my career, I'm not necessarily pitching to a bunch of unsolicited libraries who have zero idea who I am. And as a production music composer, I'm not entirely sure this is the most important thing. Now, if you were a film or game composer, then I think Reelcrafter is the best fit for you. If you're a film composer, game composer, and you have clips and all of that you need to put up, and we're not talking about like a clip from Temptation Island where your music is in the background. We're talking about a custom, 2-minute score or something, or a demo reel with many of your clips kind of back to back or whatever. Then yeah, probably Reelcrafter is the better choice. Now, $21 a month, that feels expensive to me. And this is, coming from the guy that has Hulu and Disney Plus and Paramount Plus and all of these other subscription service. I mean, heck, 52Qs offers, advanced educational subscription-based resources. So I get it. I totally get it. $21 feels a little pricey for me, but on the other hand, I think you could get away with Reelcrafter in lieu of having a website. I say that, but let me think about that for a second before I say that as fact, because I'm not necessarily sure about the landing pages, but you could. I think you could. And so in that sense, I'm paying more for web hosting and SoundCloud than I would with just one Reelcrafter page. And so that's cool too. Now, what I don't know is if you can I know you can do personalized URLs, but I don't know if you could do like DNS rerouting. So if you go to like davecroft.com and it would go to a Reelcrafter page, I don't know about that. But knowing that it's made by a composer for composers, I've heard nothing but good things about Reelcrafter, to be honest. Really good things about Reelcrafter. And I know several composers who love it, absolutely love it. And that's how they distribute their links. As far as simplicity goes, there's, it's a little bit of work to get your cues up because, they're wanting to create a reel. Whereas with SoundCloud, I can like blah, blah, blah. Let's say, for example, with SoundCloud, I have a potential new library, or here's a real world example, a library that I worked with several years ago, and we got kind of back in touch. He wanted to kind of see what I'm up to now. And so I just literally slapped some, I guess not literally, but I figuratively slapped some cues in a playlist, and I made it private or shareable, because you can share private playlists on SoundCloud. Just within 5 minutes, just went through all of my cues and went here, 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 sent him the link within 5 minutes. I don't know if it's that easy in Reelcrafter and it look like really slick and presented. So that's something to think about. But Reelcrafter, if you're wanting the press kit experience, then I think that's probably where you want to go. Again, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear from you if Reelcrafter is your jam. Now, let's say that you don't necessarily need the press kit experience, but SoundCloud is a little too simple. Let's say that you have aspirations of running your own catalog, running your own music library service. That's where I think Disco is going to be your jam. That is at disco.ac. By the way, I don't have any affiliate links or anything, so maybe I should, but I'm not sponsored or whatever for any of this. Like I said, I use SoundCloud and have for years. I've honestly considered going to Disco because it's much more of a catalog management service where you have like tags, file distribution, along with collaboration. You could send out like uncompressed WAV files to libraries, to collaborators. They can send them back. Yes, you have playlists, and I have an example of a playlist that you can put up. It's not an embedded MP4, but you can distribute files. You can download these MP3s. You can play the MP3s. So it's much more about file distribution, and with the idea of being SoundCloud, but like for music supervisors. And in fact, I think that Disco was started by music supervisors. Now, the pricing, and let me click over to annual billing here. Pricing is $9 a month, and how they gate things is unlimited playlists. So unlike Reelcrafter, where you're limited by your unlimited tracks, but you're limited by the reels and playlist, here you have a limited number of tracks, but you are limited. You have unlimited playlists. They're embeddable videos, playlists, catalog imports, and there is an inbox that you could set up for receiving files. So if you have a collaborator that wants to go onto the playlist, then you could do that as well. And that's for $9 a month for one user and up to 500 tracks. Now, in the production music landscape, 500 is I know it feels like a lot, but it's really easy to get to 500 tracks. So that alone is where that's a deal breaker for me. Now, going over to Plus, which is $13.50 a month, which is for one user and 1,000 tracks. So for one user and 1,000 tracks. Now, what I don't know is it says users. You can slide. There's a slider here. So if I need 2 users, all right. So that's going to 20,000. So if I need to add a second user, right, and 1,000 tracks, and that doubles it. If I need to add files, so it has this kind of sliding scale, which I think is on some level is pretty cool. It's very scalable. And so if you want to add more files, if you need 20,000 tracks, then that's going to set you back $116 a month for the Plus. And you get everything from, unlimited playlists, but you can also email creator. So you can create emails, advanced stats, and you can assign URLs. Next, you get up into their pro tier. So we're getting into more tiers here. You get everything that you had before, and you can enter custom fields. You can password protect playlist and distributor ingestion. So you could start bringing in cues from distributors, I believe. Not really super familiar with that. Again, I would love to hear from you. And it also has a sliding scale as well for X number of users. So if you have a big team, like with 5 users, and you need 5 users and 10,000 tracks, that's $161 a month. So, and then they have an enterprise feature that has a baked-in API, territory restrictions, white labeling, custom CSS. That's when you want this to essentially be your own branded catalog service. And Disco can expand into being a music catalog itself. If you have aspirations of being your own library with artists and with being able to, pitch to productions and allow productions to download tracks with alt mixes and all of that, then Disco is ready for you. It's called their Discovery Suite, and you can be your own library here. And it's really, really interesting. And knowing that so many libraries are started by composers, this seems really, really, really exciting to me, because getting into something like Source Audio, that feels like Source Audio is another kind of library engine. I'm sure you've seen it. And short of coding your own library, that's Source Audio is one of the big players. And there's another one whose name is totally escaping me, but Disco seems a lot easier to kind of jump on board with. But as far as pricing, it gets into like calling them and asking for their what their rates are. And Source Audio isn't necessarily cheap either. And Source Audio has another kind of scaling feature, but Source Audio has yes, they have playlists, but it's not for composers. It's for libraries, for businesses looking to create libraries to interface with clients. And so if you want that kind of professional SoundCloud, but much more kind of beefy, much more kind of slick, with a lot more interactivity between your listeners or your clients or potential libraries, then Disco might be right for you. And it's relatively new in the catalog and playlist space, but it's been the only one. Reelcrafter, it's really, really exciting, and I know it works for a lot of folks, but it's not necessarily what I need, but Disco may be. Where I'm getting hung up with is the number of files, because I have easily more than 1,000 tracks, because I don't just use my SoundCloud just to pitch to clients. Anytime I write anything, I throw it up onto SoundCloud because it's so mobile. It's got its own SoundCloud app, which is really geared for listening. And I think Disco has its app. I would be surprised if Reelcrafter didn't have an app. And if they don't, then they definitely need one. But I think Disco has its own app as well. But SoundCloud is a player like Spotify. And so I like that experience. So I put anything I write up onto SoundCloud, take it with me so I can listen to it in the car, on the earbuds, or whatever. And I think Disco allows you to do that as well. Reelcrafter isn't really geared towards that. And so it's no mystery why, why they are. It's no mystery that they focused on being that kind of press kit experience. And so, like I said at the beginning, you have to ask yourself all of these questions. What do you want your catalog or playlist to do? Like, what service, what do you need it to do? Do you need just a playlist experience, super cut and dry, not fancy, easy shareable links and possible distribution to streaming services? Then SoundCloud's probably for you. If you're needing the electronic press kit experience with branding and colors and photos and embedded videos, the website kind of vibe, then Reelcrafter is probably for you. If you're needing the catalog experience with tags and analytics and possibly branching out into being your own music library, then disco.ac might be for you. But what about you? What are some of the services you use? I'm sure there are more out there. These are just the three that I know about. I'm sure there are more. Please let me know in the comments below. I read all of the comments and make an effort to respond to each of them. And have you had experience with either of these, or SoundCloud or Reelcrafter or Disco? Have you moved from one to the other? And what has been your experience? Please let me know in the comments below. Love to hear from you. So we're going to change gears, and we're going to take a listen to Gazing Eastward, an Asian-inspired cue written by Michael Sinay. But first, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to check out Gazing Eastward on the other side.
Hey y'all, I'm Shannon Croft, and I want to tell you that the 52 Cues podcast is made possible by viewers and listeners just like you, composers and producers who are looking for a better way to connect and collaborate. You see, 52 Cues isn't just another website selling static, pre-recorded videos to a mass audience. It's a fun, vibrant, and positive community that comes together online for sharing cues, getting feedback, and discussing what's up in the production music industry. You'll find both personalized feedback and live interaction, which are the best and fastest ways to grow your skills and earn more placements. The best part is that the 52 Cues community is absolutely free. And when you're ready to take your career to the next level, we offer friends and family subscriptions, which unlock weekly live streams, live interactive group feedback sessions, monthly interactive workshops, and more. Head over to 52cues.com and sign up today. And while you're there, check out our personalized feedback videos, private lessons, and of course, merch. I can't wait to see you at 52cues.com.
All right, that was Gazing Eastward by Michael Sinay, aka Aloft Productions, SATX. Thank you so much for sending this along. This was submitted during our week 20 feedback thread, and I really enjoyed this. And one of the reasons I wanted to play this was because as production music composers, we have to understand that if we're bringing in an instrument which is historically associated with a culture or a location or even, a time of year, then we are immediately placing that, we're placing limitations on that cue. Now, this is, he says it's an intro track to a series of Eastern-inspired cues, which is really fantastic. But just know, and I'm sure you do, that this would get used to either establish a location, or if it weren't a cue set in a scene where they're traveling somewhere. And by the way, I've been watching the Mission Impossible movies recently, and they do this almost to a comic degree. And I love the Mission Impossible movies. They are so great and ridiculous and fun, and Tom Cruise running and all of that, and some really heavy hitters, have written those scores. But it's like, okay, we're going to switch to a location in Egypt. And then suddenly you hear that kind of melodic minor version of the scale with the minor second and then the augmented second interval and all of those, that typical kind of melodic and instrumentation. It's like, okay, I get it. Yes. All right. Now we're in Australia. Cue the didgeridoo. Now we're in China. Cue the erhu, which is totally fine. This is something that I see some students, especially like hip hop cues, they'll find like a really interesting sound, like a kodo or an erhu or something, and then use it because it's very, very interesting. But as soon as you bring these types of instruments, which are historically or culturally associated with, a region, a culture, or time of year or whatever, then you've kind of boxed it in. And so dropping an erhu into a hip hop cue might sound great, but you have made your cue feel at least Asian or Eastern infused, if that makes sense. The same would be true if you dropped steel drums into a cue. It's going to immediately kind of conjure Jamaica and the Caribbean, and for right or wrong, that's what's going to happen in the minds of the viewers. You drop sleigh bells into a cue, congratulations, you have yourself a Christmas cue. Christmas doesn't own sleigh bells, but that sound is intrinsically connected to December, the holiday season, and all of that. And even though sleigh bells were around, I imagine, long before, Christmas was celebrated, like in America, but I don't know. I need to do my music history on sleigh bells and when they actually came around. But there's nothing inherently like Christmas about sleigh bells, rather than Christmas time uses sleigh bells. So, knowing that this is an Eastern-inspired cue, and as long as you're okay with that, and I'm not talking to you, Michael, I'm talking to anybody wanting to use these types of sounds, you just need to know that you have essentially put limitations on what that cue or where that cue can be used. But when they need it, they're going to have it. If you throw some sleigh bells onto a hip-hop track or onto a rock track, and the client is looking for Christmas rock, Christmas hip-hop, they're going to go to you. That happens. I wrote a series of kind of epic orchestral hip-hop cues for Christmas. They're like Christmas arrangements of Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies and Carol of the Bells. And they're these big epic kind of cues, and they get used on CBS at Christmas time, when they do their, they'll throw the graphics with the holly and the snow and everything. They say like, Happy Holidays from the NFL today. And they'll do like this big kind of epic hip hop Christmas cue. But it doesn't get played any other time of the year. And so the erhu in this immediately puts it, specifically erhu is a Chinese instrument. And so this feels very Chinese, Mandarin, if you will. And this is fantastic erhu programming if it's not an actual live player. It's really nice. But again, one of the reasons I wanted to listen to this cue is I wanted to talk about using these types of sounds in production music. Now, I don't know for sure I don't know for sure if those are taiko, which leads to another point. Taiko are these big kind of epic drums. You've seen them. They're giant. They're on big stands. They're hit with these big giant mallets, and usually, they have these players which generally if they're guys, they're like shirtless and they're like rah, and they're really it's impressive, super impressive. Although I have seen some female taiko drummers who are just monster players. So it's definitely not just men playing taiko. But taiko drums are Japanese. And so it can get really interesting when we have an erhu, which is Chinese, and then we have taiko, which are Japanese, and kind of mashing them together in our kind of ethnocentric kind of way. We're just like, well, it's all Eastern, it's all Asian, so we just kind of mash it together. But that's something that I think we have to be careful with as well. Well, I was playing World of Warcraft the other day, and the troll area, just bear with me, folks. The troll area has like didgeridoo, but also doumbek, but also djembe. And so we have like Australian instruments, Middle Eastern instruments, and African instruments all kind of mashed together. Now, in World of Warcraft, that's an imaginary fantasy place. And so, sure, we can have African and Middle Eastern and Australian instruments all mashed together. But it kind of made my brain itch a little with all of these sounds which don't really go together. And again, it's fantasy, and we're talking, trolls, so it ultimately doesn't matter. But for a cue that you might be pitching to a library looking for something, they're wanting to tell a specifically Chinese story, then I think it's something that you have to be mindful of, depending on how authentic you want to be. Do you just want to have, like you said, Eastern inspired? So I'm imagining you're not trying to like go for authentic, like only using Chinese sounds. I mean, obviously there are other instruments beyond just Chinese instruments here. But if you're working for a library or you're pitching to a library or pitching a queue that is looking to have very specific cultural indicators, then it's something to be careful with. Don't bring taikos and taiko and odaiko to a Chinese cue. Likewise, don't drop an erhu in the middle of a Japanese cue. Now, there are some overlaps, like guzheng and koto are very, very similar sound. The zhengu, I think is how you pronounce that. The zhengu is it's like a big Chinese war drum, very similar to the taiko and the odaiko, but it's something just to keep in mind. And just be mindful of it when you're writing, and knowing if that's something that the library is looking for. But as far as this cue itself and some actual feedback, this is all really, really beautiful work. Really beautiful work. Yeah, I think you've done an absolute stellar job, and I appreciate you sending that my way. Like I mentioned, this cue was submitted as part of our Week 20 search. And by the way, go follow Michael over on the SoundCloud. Speaking of SoundCloud, lots of SoundCloud links here. But go follow him. I do put links to the composers and to their profiles in the description, and follow those around. This was submitted for our Week 20 search, or it's not really a search, just a weekly feedback thread. And I would absolutely love it if you join us over at 52 Cues. We post links every single week, and we have folks submit cues for feedback. And like I said, we would love to have you with us. But I think that's going to do it for me today. I really super appreciate you being with me. And like I said at the beginning, if you like what I do here, don't thank me. Thank the patrons, the family, and the friends of 52 Cues who help keep all of this going. They support us. We're 100% community supported. You're not going to hear mattress commercials or like HelloFresh, and nothing against those folks. But I love the fact that we are 100% supported by you folks. And so would love to have you join us. Speaking of joining us, you absolutely should join next week, where I'm going to be talking to two 52 Cues community members who have found success with Taxi. being in their top 10 for May. So we're going to be talking about those. We're going to talk about their taxi tips, if taxi is worth it, and what you need to do to really get and maximize your experience if you are a taxi member. But that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for sticking around. And yeah, I hope you had a great week 20, and I look forward to seeing you next week for week 21. Until next time, peace. The 52Qs podcast is copyright 2022 Dave Croft, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the 52Qs community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52qs.com.